Hello and welcome back to The Peaceful Place. I'm your host, Melissa Field, and today I want to talk about something that can stop us in our tracks from doing the thing we want to do, from living the life we envision for ourselves, which is perfectionism, which is the fear of not being enough, not doing something in the best way possible, not doing it as good as other people are doing it. And with it, the fear of criticism, judgment, of maybe being found out. There's that kind of element of imposter syndrome that can be in there of, I'm not as good as I pretend to be, and I'm going to be found out at any moment that I actually don't know what I'm doing. I wanted to talk about this because in the last episode I recorded, the one I put out, I had a major just kind of attack of perfectionism and not feeling good enough. And perfectionism is one of those things that I would say everybody struggles with, but it can show up in different ways. So perfectionism can show up as needing to do something perfect. It can also show up as procrastination, just the fear to start or constantly putting things off because deep down there's that fear that you're not going to get it right. It can show up as just an overall feeling of not being enough, not being good enough, of wanting to hide because you need to protect yourself. It really just falls under the umbrella of negative critical thinking and not valuing our unique selves and the gifts we have. And it really ties into just belief systems of how were you taught to think about yourself and how were you taught to stay safe. It's very likely that you did not want to make a mistake because it came with punishments, maybe love being withheld. It's very possible that you weren't taught that mistakes are not only human, but essential to the process. One of my favorite quotes of all time is, "The road to success and the road to failure are the same road." I think about that all the time. You cannot do anything without learning, stumbling, and falling, and then learning how to do better along the way. So what I wanted to say was I recorded this episode and it didn't come out how I wanted it to. It was longer than I wanted it to be. I felt like I went off on a few different tangents and I kind of feel myself doing that again right now. I'm not as focused as I used to be when I used to podcast all the time. I haven't done this in a while, so I feel like I'm getting my sea legs back. I'm learning how to speak into a microphone and follow a train of thought and continue to say what I want to say while connecting dots as I go. There's a skill set to this that I had really felt comfortable with, but I haven't done this in a long time. And I feel myself kind of struggling to get that muscle memory back. So I recorded that episode and it was 30 minutes. I'd wanted it to be about 10. So I was like, at the end, I was like, what did I say? What was I talking about that whole time? Why did I have to share so many thoughts? Why was I trying to get in every thought related to what I was talking about? And why was I veering left and right? And did I even do what I wanted to do? I was just consumed with doubt and worry and feeling like that's garbage, which just started to overtake me. And that was all I could think about was like, that wasn't good. That was not good. You have to do it again. Now, here's the thing that I want to share with you that helped me to not let that perfectionism ruin what was a perfectly good episode. It was not my best, and I am still kind of getting reoriented with my kind of podcasting abilities and with how I want to share things and communicate on here, but it wasn't terrible. I listened to it twice and I was like, that was good. There was good stuff in there. It wasn't my best, but perfectionism is really just the death of creativity and sharing and connection. It just puts us in a space of silence and stillness, and it kind of stifles our natural human spirit, which just wants to share and play and do things as they are. I mean, good enough is good enough. And this is something I still struggle with. So what helped me was I've been using this app called Ahead, and Ahead helps you to kind of reprogram your neural wiring. And they talk about that they have like a team of like psychologists and scientists, and there's all kinds of things that go into it. And it's surprisingly simple how it works, like really simple, almost like childlike exercises, but I find it to be really effective. And I'm going through 2 of the courses. One is for anxiety and one is for confidence. And I can't remember which course this was in, but it was on perfectionism. And when we tell ourselves, I'll do that when, instead of saying, I'm just going to do it now with things as is, as they are, I'm going to go for it. So it's like, I'll do that when I feel better about my body, when I'm in better shape. I'll do that when I feel I've learned more. I'll do that when this happens, that happens. And these things can just stack up in our mind. And you may have experienced this, that you just continuously move the bar forward. You continuously move that line of, I'll do this when. It's like you want to get back into dating. I'll do this when I lose 10 pounds. And then you lose 10 pounds. Okay, I'll do this when I have better clothes, or I'll do this when I'm more successful in my career. And we're always moving that barometer of when we're ready. And so what this exercise they wanted to do was to take it from I'll do this when to I'll do this now. I'll just go for it now. And what they asked me was, if you were going to enter a race and the winner of the race got more money than they could ever dream of, what would you build in order to do this seafaring race? So the first option was this rickety raft with like one post and a tattered cloth as your sail. And part of the race was you had to build the raft. So if you're just trying to get to the finish line as fast as possible, this rickety raft might be a great option. You can do it fast. You can throw it together. You're out there catching the wind, trying to get as much money as possible, which would change your life. The second option was this spectacular, luxurious boat with like columns and actual buildings in it and plants and vines. And it looked like a floating city. It was gorgeous. And so this is the second option of you're entering this race. Do you want the raft that's ugly but workable? Or do you want the thing that's basically perfect, but by the time you finish it, the race would be over? You would not have even left the harbor, and it's probably going to be very slow. So you don't win the prize, which ironically, if you won the prize, you could build 10 of these luxurious floating cities. And so they said, which one would you build? And sometimes they show you how other people responded, and sometimes they don't. So this one, they showed the results of people were given the option of, you're going to enter this race to win more money than you could ever dream of. All you have to do is build a raft and be the first to the finish line. And do you want the rickety raft, or do you want the floating city that's beautiful? And so I myself had to think about it. Like, it really caught me, like, oh, that raft is ugly. It's embarrassing. I wouldn't want to be seen on that. It doesn't look good enough. It doesn't look like a winner. It was really interesting, the thoughts that just instantly kicked in relation to that is not enough and I need to look perfect. I need to be seen a certain way. And so I thought about it, and then I was like, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do here. It's to choose the podunk raft because that's the one that's just going to get you going. And so I picked the raft, and then it showed the results. What do you think? How many people do you think chose the raft? It was about 70%, and 30% of people chose that floating city. And then it said, okay, you had the option of choosing between these two things, but keep in mind that this was a race about time. And if you chose the floating city, you probably never even left the harbor. And first of all, I want to give a lot of respect to those people who chose the floating city, because I myself was very drawn to it, even though I knew it was irrational and not the thing that would get me to something even better. I really had to kind of like push myself to be like, you have to choose the one that's ready to go now, even if you think that somehow that's not worthy or not going to look like a winner. And so thank you to those people who were honest, because I was struggling with it, and it was kind of a relief to see that even when you know intellectually what you should do, we still feel drawn to choosing the quote unquote perfection. And that just says so much about how much this stuff gets deeply, deeply wired into us. And I mean, that in itself was kind of a relief to me that we really struggle with this, and it can be hard to root out. It's not like you're doing something wrong when you do get stuck in perfectionism or procrastination or just deep fear and self-doubt. That is just wired so deeply into us to be and look like the best. So after the exercise, and again, this is on the Ahead app if anybody wants to go and explore that on their own. And so after the exercise, that just really stuck with me of like, even if I got on that little raft and didn't win, how much more fun would I have to be out there sailing with the wind in my face and the water splashing up and feeling that exhilaration of just racing and being part of something, of just leaving shore and being part of the race, doing my best, giving it my all, feeling myself in the moment, just feeling myself living and going for it. It's like, even if that raft wasn't the one that won, it would still be worth it to just go for it. And that just, gosh, that really stuck with me. So, I mean, you can have this floating city and it can be quote unquote perfect, but if you're never leaving the shore, what have you actually achieved other than maybe just kind of like feeding into your fears of needing to be perfect, of feeling like almost trapped by your own need to never put yourself out there? And so I finished that episode and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I want to redo it. And then that image of the raft just popped into my mind. Like, you can get on the raft and go, or you can stay at the harbor in the floating city and always wonder what if I'd gotten into the race? What if I'd gotten out there, met the funnest people I've ever met? What if I fell in the water and had the biggest laugh of my life? I mean, when you just go for it, there's so many unknowns, and we often fear the unknown because we are on guard and kind of like preparing for what could go wrong. But 9 times out of 10, things go better than we think they would have. And when they don't go as we had hoped, we learn incredible lessons about resilience and inner strength and who we really are. I mean, it's just, I think, always more worth it to just get on the raft and go. So I put the episode out there and I was glad I did. And I was still kind of like struggling with it. And I still, even today, as I'm talking about this, I'm still feeling like, oh, that just wasn't that good. But you know what? Putting it out there taught me so much more than what I would have learned if I had redone it. And here's another thing that had kind of stuck in my mind is years ago, I was doing a series of podcast episodes around one of my courses, Manifesting Magic. And I got to day 7 and I said, okay, so here's how you can easily shift your energy is you think of and reflect on powerful, uplifting words. Words carry vibration. And so if I say to you, what does fear feel like? That's a word that feels dense, heavy, contracting. But if you ask yourself, what does expansion feel like? What makes me feel expanded? You can feel that expansion. So I started the episode just talking about the power of focus. What are you focusing on? And so I said, now you're going to try focusing on these words and just noticing what it does for you. And I said that this is easy and you have to sometimes let it be easy. Embrace the power of easy. Don't always feel like you have to work things to death because it doesn't always benefit you. And sometimes it even makes it worse. So I finished that episode and then total doubt, fear, imposter syndrome kicked in of this is terrible. This is the worst thing I've ever made. I hate this. Recorded a new episode. That was the time when I didn't understand to just get on the raft and trust yourself. I recorded a new episode. It was fine. And then, sometime later, like months and months later, I went back and listened to it and I was like, oh shoot, that was good. I just couldn't see it. It's just like crazy how these thoughts will be so overwhelming and intense that we will believe that they're telling us something. And this is one of the things I've learned through these apps that I use. I'm using Ahead now, and I also use one called Clarity, which is a CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy app. And they just often tell you, like, just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. Just because you think you're not good enough doesn't mean it's true. We can think something so often and have thought it for such a long time that it feels true, but it's really strange that you can think something with full conviction that has no truth to it. And part of this comes from often a lack of nuance, just a lack of looking at the full gradation of things. We often look at things in absolutes. I'm the best or I'm the worst, when in fact, there's a whole spectrum happening within all of us at all times. Nobody's ever the best or the worst. So these apps have really just helped me to see that, like, hey, I can think that I have created the worst thing ever, or I am the worst person ever, with so much feeling that it's got to be like, this has to be true. This has to be real. And it's really helped me to see that it's very important that I question that stuff, that I just step back and say, is this true? Is there evidence for this? Is there evidence that that episode I made the other day was genuinely the worst thing I've ever done? Whoopsie. Is there... So sorry. I normally would redo that, but since I'm talking about perfectionism, I'm going to leave in the fact that I forgot to silence my phone because things happened. So when I made that episode, was there evidence that that's the worst thing I've ever done? No. Like, when I first started, I was so nervous and I couldn't get a thought out. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever done, but it wasn't the best. And that's that nuance I'm talking about. That's so important. Not everything has to be the best. And so when I made that episode years ago and then redid it, that kind of planted a seed of like, hey, sometimes you see things through a distorted lens. You don't always see things how they are. Your negative self-talk can be so powerful that you can doubt even something that's good and helpful to other people. And one other example of this I want to give is I've mentioned a couple times that I'm currently finishing up a novel that I've been working on for a while, and that about 15 years ago, I wrote a different novel and I shared it with somebody, with a writing partner that I connected with online, and like he gave me his feedback. And then I showed him something different. I'm not sure what I shared with him. And he was like, oh, wow, like the way you naturally write is so good. You should trust yourself more. And he didn't specifically say this, but I knew what he was saying, which is that other novel was overwritten. And he didn't say it in a mean way, but he was the only person who actually was like honest enough to be like, you can kill creativity by beating it to death. You can overwork something. You can ruin something by trying to make it perfect. It's kind of an ironic thing that when we try to make something perfect, we make it less than it would be naturally. We strip something away from it. It's humanity. It's just the organic flow that's trying to come through. And that just really stuck with me when he was just like, wow, like you can really write, but you are overwriting what you have. You're not trusting yourself. So when I did this novel, the second one, that was something I listened to, and I was so happy when I got the feedback from my writing partners that they were all like, it just flows so well. I just wanted to keep reading. I loved how the sentence structure kind of seemed to like flow with what was happening with the story. And it got to a point recently where I was like, at this point, I know I could start to overwrite it. I could get into that fear and that perfectionism, and I could take away the magic of what's here. There's a point where you have to just trust yourself. And that in itself could be a whole episode of how do you trust yourself? How do you work on those negative how do you work on those negative thoughts that can be that powerful that you can't even like hear anything else? And it's just a process. I mentioned I have 2 apps for it, and I use them every morning. I also use meditations and visualizations, and I just try to catch myself throughout the day. And it still happens. Like the other day when I got completely overwhelmed and it was just like, I'm not good enough. It's just a process, and just allowing yourself to know that it's okay to be overwhelmed by the fear of making a mistake, because there's so many different reasons we internalize that. There's more I want to say about that, but this is what I did on Tuesday when I kept trying to like explain everything every thought that I was having. So what I really want to do is leave you with that visual of the raft and the floating city. And that came from the Ahead app, which I'm not trying to promote. I don't keep saying that because I think you should go get the app. I just want to acknowledge that this wasn't mine, but I saw this on a different resource and I'm sharing it, and it really helped me. So when you are about to trash something or overdo it, or you're just not able to start because you're overwhelmed by fear and doubt, get on the raft. Use the visual of the raft. It really helped me. And just know that this is something that everybody struggles with in some form. It shows up in different ways, and it can be in there so deep that even when we know it's holding us back, like the 30% of the people who chose the floating city, even when we know, don't do it, it can still be really powerful and overwhelming. So give yourself compassion and know that it can get better. I've been working at this for a while, and old me would have 100% deleted that episode, all of that work. It was completely edited and ready to go, and redone the whole thing. So the fact that I was able to step back and hold those doubts within me and go forward anyways tells me that it can and does get better. And like I said, I still feel like, oh, that wasn't that great. And that's just part of the process for me, because even in our desire to overcome perfection, we can still be wanting to be perfect. We can be wanting to think like, I shouldn't care and I should be able to put that out there and feel good. And you know what? It's okay to hold doubt and to not be perfect in your confidence. It's a learning process. It's a learning process. So I'm going to finish there. Thank you so much for joining me. If you would like to work on the rewiring of your thoughts and tuning into your inner self that is confident and working on your belief systems, I would love for you to join me in my membership. There's 3 different tiers. The first one is $5, and it includes hundreds of powerful meditations and visualizations that will work. They will rewire your inner beliefs. They will empower you, uplift you, energize you. And then the next 2 tiers, tier 2 is $15 and tier 3 is $35, have these really powerful courses that I have spent years developing that will take you on an even deeper journey if that's what you're wanting. So that's the Dream Life Sanctuary. I'm going to put the link in my episode notes. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode, which was not perfect, was interrupted by a phone call, and I didn't do it again exactly how I wanted to because I still feel myself kind of getting back into my groove, but I'm doing the best I can. I'm getting on the raft. I'm sailing off for unknown adventures, and I hope that this was helpful to you in some way, and I will be back again soon. Thank you so much for joining me in the Peaceful Place, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.